Thank you for your purchase of our Tach-It Mini-Con Top Label Applicator. We've created this video to assist you in the setup of this machine and the initial use. Once the machine is uncrated and all the packaging materials are used, you want to first do is install the label roll guide. The label roll guide will be packed separately in the crate and is installed using 3 Allen screws. These 3 screws will be installed within this main plate utilizing the Allen wrenches that are initially supplied with the machine in the parts bag that has other necessary accessories. You're going to remove those 3 screws out of the main plate, properly position your label roll hanger, and securely tighten these 3 screws. Your next step in the installation of this is going to be to connect your inputs and outputs. This is our touchscreen controller, and this is the back side, and you have 5 inputs and outputs into this machine. Each of these inputs is flagged with a label that coordinates directly with the embossing on the back plate, or will have a unique pin configuration. It is important that if it does not go in properly into the input, do not force it, as you can break a pin. Once these are connected properly, you just secure them by utilizing the threaded collar on the end. This is your 110 volt input. This machine does not require any dedicated circuits or amperage requirements. While we're in the back, a couple things we do want to take notice of is on the back of the machine, this can be reached from the front also, is your adjustment for the height of the label head. As you can see, it has a numeric indicator with the indication shown from the front, and by turning this, you'll move the head up and down on this ball screw. If you need a further adjustment, the whole label head can be moved up and down by loosening these collars and physically moving the label head up and down. Over here we have our conveyor speed controller. To adjust the conveyor speed controller, what you would do is turn this knob, and then once you're at the desired speed, you will then hold it, which will set that speed. Please note that if you do make changes to the speed of the conveyor, you may need to make changes within the control system, as well as it could affect the overall consistency of the label placement. Let's go around to the front. And this is our touchscreen controller, which I'll come back to in a minute. We already discussed our label roll guide. Over here you have another knob and ball screw for moving the label head laterally across the conveyor. This has the same type of numeric indicator as the height does. These indicators are great because if you have various products, once you have it set up the first time, you know what the variable is shown in this window. All you do is when you go back to that product, you just go back to that same variable. We have our product rails. Our product rails are used to guide the product through the labeler straight and consistently. These can be adjusted up and down or in and out by using the Allen wrenches provided by loosening the screw in this collar or the screw in the vertical collar and just moving them physically. You have a laser etched rail here, so it's the same as the other adjustments. Once a notation is made of where that is, you can then just go right back to it for product changes. Going a little further down the conveyor, we have our start sensor and reflector. The start sensor is located on the back side of the machine and will create a beam that goes across the conveyor. This beam is going to be broken by the product as it goes through, and that indicates the leading edge of that product. Few things, these two must be aligned properly across from each other. Also, the product rails or nothing can interfere with that beam coming across to the sensor, or the sensor will not read. Going further up onto our label head, we have our feed station here, which we'll show you as we load the labels. And this is our stop sensor. Our stop sensor can be moved up and down utilizing this thumb screw, or across utilizing this thumb screw, and the stop sensor will read the gap in the labels. This is very important because this way the label feed is consistent. On the front of the machine also is your label feeding path. This is a guide for you to know how to feed the labels each time a roll change is required. Let's put on the roll of labels. The label roll hanger has an inner flange and an outer flange. To remove the outer flange, all we do is press the spring clamp, which opens it up, so no tools are required, and we're going to remove the flange. If the inner flange needs to be moved, you'll have a collar with a set screw. This can then be moved in and out as needed. And then by loosening this set screw, and once you have it in the position you want, you'll then tighten it up. So to load the machine, I'm going to take the label roll, put it onto the 3-inch core embossed within the flange. Take my outer flange and just push it against. This does not need to be tight. We don't want to create tension here that could cause any type of a feeding inconsistency. Following my label roll guide, I'm going to come under this shaft and up and over the brake arm here. Now, one clue about this, to know that your labels are fed properly, is the label must physically touch this shaft. If the backing paper is touching that shaft, the label is not fed in the proper orientation. You'll notice on all of these shafts also you have spring collars. These spring collars just move in and out, and they're utilized to keep the tracking of the label straight to ensure a proper application. Once your labels, as you're feeding them, and once they're over the shaft in the proper position, you want to make sure your labels are tracking straight, and you want to contain it with the spring collars, but don't let them actually touch the label web, or it could cause too much tension in the label web to break. We're now going to go behind this shaft, and we're going to go down to the peel plate. And I'll come back and talk about the stop sensor in a minute. And at this point, I'm going to pull out some excess label. I'm going to go behind this roller and under the urethane to the peel plate. Now this is a wipe-on applicator, so there is a brush. We've put the brush in the up position for the purposes of this video, but normally it would be in this position. I'm now going to come down and pull the label stock, and what I want to do is stop the label so one of the die cuts or space in the label is right at the end of the peel plate. And we'll explain this in a minute. Once I have that in that position, I'm going to come back underneath and come to my feed station. Now my feed station has an open position for loading and a closed position for use of the machine. So I want to make sure it's in the open position. I'm going to go over the purple urethane roller and down under and around the gray knurled roller and come up to my label rewinder. In the accessory bag I mentioned earlier will be a U-pin, and we're just going to go like that to secure it. Labels are now fed. My next step, and should be done immediately, is I'm going to close that feed station. And you'll see that there's no more gap in between these two rollers. Coming back up to this shaft, on the back side is a urethane wiper. This urethane wiper is there to apply a little bit of tension on the label roll as it's feeding down from this point to the peel plate. That makes sure that it's consistent. There is another urethane flap on the peel plate which also should have some tension. So I'm going to bring in my collars, looking to see that my labels are tracking straight. Again, you don't want to actually pinch the label. Now we're going to set our stop sensor. So this, as we mentioned earlier, is our stop sensor. On the back side of the sensor is a label with an arrow. This arrow shows the detection point on the sensor. So what we want to do is we want to try to get that sensor into the middle of our label. So what I'm going to do is, utilizing this thumb screw, I'm going to loosen the sensor and I'm going to slide it into the middle as much as possible. So the label is actually going through this gap in the sensor. Now this sensor is adjustable for sensitivity based on the label you're using. So the yellow light should be on whenever the gap in the label is inside that sensor. If that's not happening, you want to press the plus button 2 or 3 times. So if I move this down, you'll see that the yellow light went off as the label moved. If I move it back up, the yellow light is on. This is vital, so only one label is fed each time. Now, if the label gap and the sensor are not matching up, you can adjust this label vertically up and down by utilizing this thumb screw, and that whole sensor will move up and down, such as this. So I'm moving it down, the yellow light is off. I'm now going to move it up, and the yellow light is on. Again, if we're at that gap and there is no yellow light, we want to press that plus button once or twice. 3 times at the most, try it and go back. Another issue can happen is if the label is moving through that sensor and the yellow light comes on, that means that it's too sensitive and is actually picking up the label itself. If that should happen, you want to hit the minus button a few times, move the label in between, and just make sure that the yellow light is only coming on in the gap. Those are our physical setup of the machine. First thing I want to do now is I want to feed a label, make sure it's feeding properly and feeding to the proper feed position. The proper feed position is you want the label to extend 1 or 2 millimeters past the end of this peel plate. Right now we're about 1 to 2 millimeters, so we're fine. But I'm going to show you how I do this setup on the labels. This is where our file comes in. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File. I'm working on File 1. I'm going to hit my label speed, and I'm going to make it very, very slow. And I want to do this just to make sure the labels are feeding properly. So I'm going to go to 200. Anytime you want to change any of these variables, including the ones on the home screen, just hit the box, hit clear. I'm going to hit 200, enter. Anytime you do this, you have to hit save OK. Now I'm going to hit run. I'm just going to pass my label, my hand across the label. And I'll see that it'll feed one label out slowly and stops in the right position. So now I know my label feed is going well. I'm just checking the track. The track looks good. It looks straight. I'm just going to adjust this pressure a little bit to center it. I have my yellow light here. We're good to go. Let's talk a little bit more about the touchscreen controller. So the first box up here, count, that's your existing count of how many cycles you've done. You can clear that by hitting the C, back to 0. I'd only done 1. This machine has a target counter. The target counter can be used if you have a specific number of products you want to run with that specific label. We currently have that set on 1,000, but looking over here, I see that the box is not filled in. That means that the target counter is not on. I'll show you how to turn that on in a minute. The labeler is on because that box is filled in. And again, I can show you how to turn that on and off. So let's go into the individual settings on the bottom. This is our run and our stop. So when you see the run, it means the machine is not designed to run. It's just in standby. If you're showing stop, the machine is in the run position. Your input outputs are great for setup and diagnostic. So I now know, because the yellow light is on the sensor itself, that the sensor is sending an input to the PLC because that's blacked out. I run my hand across the start sensor. I see that that's working properly, and the stepper motor is an output of this. Again, for diagnostics and for other applications. Option. Option allows me to turn various features of the machine on and off. So right now the labeler is on, the target counter is off. If I want to turn the target counter on, I would just hit it, it goes to on, come back, and now it's highlighted here. One thing very important when using the target counter is you must clear your top count. If that's showing 200 and you're now trying to do 1,000, it's going to take that 200 into account. So you just clear it by hitting here. If I want to change the target counter again, I want to make it 500, I just go 500, enter. So I want to turn my label head back on at this time for label use, and I want to turn my target off. So the labeler is on, the target is off, and I can confirm here. File is the most important and most used function here. Label speed adjusts directly to the conveyor speed. So I remember now that the variable here was 900. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to 900. Enter, save, OK. That's going to now reset the label speed at 900. So if I go back to the machine being run, you saw how slow it was at 200. You can see now how fast it is at 900. The second function here is start delay. The start delay is a delay from when the start sensor, which we showed earlier, reads the leading edge of the product I'm trying to label to where I want that label on the product. So if I want it further back, I'm going to increase the number. I want it closer to the front, I'm going to decrease the number. And that number is increased and decreased the same manner as we've shown previously. Stop delay is relative to the stop sensor up here. As we mentioned, you want 1 or 2 millimeters of that label sticking out. I'm a little bit short now, so I'm going to add 5 counts. Enter, always hit save, OK. I'm in run. Let's see, we'll see where that. So now the label fed out a little bit further. I want to try get it slightly further out. I'm going to go to 10. 10. Enter, save, OK. That's perfect. And that's where we want it to stop. So now it's a matter of putting your product into the machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to option. I'm going to turn my labeler off because I don't want to waste labels. And I'm going to turn on my conveyor, utilize my conveyor on-off button right here, and I'm going to set my product guides. Now what I normally do when utilizing the machine is I set this product guide at the edge of the conveyor, so I'm only adjusting one product guide. I can always adjust the label head laterally to make sure I'm getting into the middle of the product. So with the label head off, I'm going to put my box to be labeled on and just make sure that it flows through the label, the conveyor smoothly, and my product guides are not interfering. If needed, as we talked about earlier, you can adjust the product guides in and out and up and down. The second adjustment is on the peel plate, the physical adjustment. So what I'm doing is I'm having the box directly under the peel plate, and you want to have that peel plate as close to the box as you can without it interfering. That will give you the most consistency. Now, if needed, the angle of this peel plate can be adjusted, or the in and out, or that distance from the peel plate to the main body can be adjusted as well. But in most cases, that is not required. Once I see that, and I can adjust it with the handle back here, I'm now going to hit my conveyor again, and now I know that my box can run through the machine without any interruptions and smoothly, and that my label head is in the right position. I'm now going to go back to option. I'm gonna hit on, go back. Now I'm gonna take a look at file 1 and see where my start delay is. So my start delay is at 0. That means that the label is gonna feed immediately when the leading edge of this box hits that beam of the start sensor. I know that that's not where I want this. So I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna put in a variable of 300 to start. So I'm just gonna hit 300, enter, save, okay. Now I'm gonna test it once and see where the label actually applies. So a couple things I'm noticing is the label is applying very early. I'm not centered here, but I also saw a little dragging in the label as it was going underneath. Let me do that one more time and you can see it. So a couple revisions I need to make. I'm gonna go back in the file. I'm gonna increase my label speed to 1000, which should stop the dragging. I'm also going to increase my delay to about 550, and this is some trial and error, and I'm going to hit save, okay. I'm also utilizing this handle, going to bring the label head in so it's more centered on the box. Let's try that again. That would be, normally the brush would be in the down position. Let's run it again. So I want to come back a little further and go a little bit more in. Now once these are made, and these will be permanently stored in file 1. And that's a much better position for what I'm looking for. Let's run it on the other side. Run it again with the brush up. So you can see it's on the same spot each time. So this is the basic setup of the machine. If I had various products, I could go into file 2. All I would do once I choose file 2, confirm my numbers, hit save, okay. Now we're working file 2. Thank you for your purchase again of the Tach-It Mini-Con Top Labeler. This video was also relative to our Mini-Con side labeler. The only difference is this label head is now mounted to the side. We'll work on our top and bottom labeler. The main difference here is we also have a bottom label head, but all your adjustments and everything are the same. And we'll also work on our Mini-Con on a stand. The only difference there is it's working with an independent conveyor rather than your integrated conveyor. In that particular case, your label speed will have to match the independent conveyor. Other than that, your adjustments are the same. And what you would need to do is directly mount your start and stop sensor to that independent conveyor to detect the product. If we can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to contact us at sales@tachit.com. Thank you and have a great day.